think about it, nobody in their right mind likes to be in conflict with others. We all want peace, don't we? Peace is such a wonderful thing. Now, I get that there are people in this world who love to stir up the trouble. They are not happy unless they are in some conflict with someone else or if they are causing conflict with others. We look around and we see conflict all around us because we know that this world, for one, the Bible tells us that it is Satan's world, not because he's most powerful, because God allows him. The God with a little g, he has the in charge of this world and of the air. Now, he's not in charge over God, we understand that, but he's allowed to roam this earth like a lion right now. He could seek, and he does seek, whomever he may devour. But we know Matthew chapter 25 and verse 41 tells us that God has prepared a place for his adversary, which is our adversary, and his angels. So when we think about the conflict that we see out there, we know that that conflict, there's always the devil behind the conflict that we have in the world and all the wars and everything you could think about and the politics and all the fighting. We know who's behind that. There's a story of a man who had been facing constant struggles, and he was in financial instability. He had health issues in his life, and he had these broken relationships all around him. And no matter how hard he tried, peace seemed to always evade him. And after years of fighting his battles alone, he finally surrendered his burdens to God. We looked at that today a little bit about surrendering. How God will take our burdens upon him, that those are not for us to carry. Well, slowly but surely, this man saw change. And the circumstances didn't immediately resolve, but an overwhelming peace began to guard his heart and his mind. The man learned that peace wasn't about the absence of conflict, but about the presence of God in the middle of this and in his life, working in his life. I call your attention just for a few minutes to 1 Samuel chapter 7 and verse 14. It states here, the towns from Ekron to Gath that the Philistines had captured from Israel were restored to Israel. And Israel delivered the neighboring territory from the hands of the Philistines. And there was peace between Israel and the Amorites. So we look at 1 Samuel 7, and we see the Israelites, they were in this constant battle, this constant conflict with the Philistines. And they were often oppressed, and often they were defeated because they strayed from God. Think about that. Whenever we stray from God, we open ourselves up to all kinds of problems, and we are in conflict. For one, we put ourselves in conflict with God. And so when we do that, what happens? We will be defeated. Number two, however, they turned back to him, and after Samuel's leadership, that God then intervened. And we see here in verse 14, it shows that God not only delivered them from their enemies, but also he restored what had been lost. As a result, there is peace. When we have that restoration with God, we know that we could live our lives in peace and we could walk in peace. But to me, what stands out in this passage is that peace came after they were restored, and they then had that deliverance. This wasn't a peace achieved by human strategy. It wasn't by human power, by our strength, but only by God. Only what God gave them is when that was restored, that relationship, and they had peace. So the Israelites didn't have to fight for this peace. They simply had to return back to God, and they had to have that trust that God was going to fight their battles. The battle belongs to the Lord. Often we take that battle on our shoulders, don't we? In any of the battles. You could think about David and the giant, and Goliath, and you think about, we face giants in our life. And when we do that, sometimes it's out of our power. It just comes at us. What do we do when we face giants in our life? Well, we know David knew that he could face Goliath because of why? because he knew God was with him. The odds were completely against David, but he had already defeated a bear, right? A bear and a lion. He went up against a bear, didn't he? And he defeated that bear because he had the Lord with him. There are seasons in life when peace feels like it's so distant in our lives. It could be a number of things that are hitting you, but we might face these personal battles, whether our relationships, or we may be in trouble with our health, or we may even get in some spiritual conflict in our lives, and we may be, seem weak, and then we may feel like we're losing that battle. And then sometimes it seems like it's never ending. Yeah, just as God brought peace to Israel in a time of their conflict, he can bring peace to your life. And his peace is not always the result of this immediate resolution, but comes when we trust in him. We trust in God to work in our lives. In the midst of our struggles, we give it to the Lord. So as we finish this Devo, so to speak, as we leave today, let's reflect on the areas of our lives where we know that we need God's peace. There could be something going on in your life right now that's caused conflict in you, in your heart, in your mind, in your everyday living. And so ask God to go to him and pray to him and trust that he is fighting your battles. Just like God delivered Israel, God is also going to deliver you if you trust in him. And that lesson is yours today. If you need to respond to this invitation to number 50, right? Number 50. You need to respond as we sing this hymn. Come forward. Come forward now as we stand and we sing the invitation song.